The storm arrives with the quiet of a held breath. Evelyn feels it before she sees it. Air going still, gulls skimming low over the harbour like folded letters, the light turning the colour of a pearl held too long. On the boardwalk, summer stands at attention. Blue bicycles locked to rails, a child's pail overturned, the last tourists tracing lazy arcs of salt on their shins. But beneath it, the town of Havenmouth tightens as if someone is tugging, gently but insistently, on a seam. She tucks a stray curl under the scarf at her nape and glances back at the bookshop's window. In the glass, she looks like a watercolour left in the rain, edges softened, colours tucked into one another. 8 months in this borrowed town, and the reflection still startles her. No city roar, no deadlines, only the bell over her door and the tide's long exhale. She turns the sign from open to back in 5 and steps out to rescue the box of used paperbacks she forgot under the awning. The air tastes like iron and seaweed. When she bends, a page loosens and sails away in a delicate panic. She follows it to the end of the pier, where it snags against a shoe. Sturdy leather darkened by spray. Laces frayed, attached to a man leaning over the water as if listening for something beneath it. He is not from here, she thinks first. His coat is city thin, his posture careful in a way that says he is keeping an argument with himself. He reaches down for the page at the same time she does, and their fingers bump, soft shock against soft shock. "Sorry," he says, straightening. The word is shaped like he's accustomed to saying it. "It's okay," she answers, though what she means is, "Who are you, and why does my heart recognize the outline of your silence?" He holds up the runaway page, a single paragraph about a lighthouse and a ship that chose to turn. "Yours?" "Sort of. Everything with words probably is." That's what Mrs. Ames from the bakery told her the first week. "You're the girl who came with boxes of books and eyes like you've read too much weather." Evelyn had laughed politely, but it was true. She knows the atmospheres of novels better than her own. There was a life before this, sharp shoes, coffee at 4, a desk with a view of an identical window across the way, but it feels like someone else's dream. He checks the sky, where clouds are massing like a slow congregation. "Storm rolling in," he says. "You should get those inside." "You sound like someone who's sailed through a few." He smiles, and it is not a proud smile. It is the kind you carry alone and forget to show to mirrors. Or slept under the wrong roof a few times. He offers the page back. It should be nothing, a courtesy, a breath, but the space between his hand and hers opens like a small door. She notices his knuckles, fine scars like punctuation marks. His eyes are the grey-blue of waves over rock. He smells faintly of cedar and rain, which is impossible because it has not rained yet, but she is in the habit of believing impossible things. She takes the page, presses it to the book like a bandage. "Thank you." He nods and steps past, the wind lifting the hem of his coat. She expects him to leave the way strangers do in cities, cleanly, a sentence ending in a period. But he stops a few steps on, turns as if a thought tugged him back. "Do you know a place to get a room? Somewhere that doesn't mind that I'll be quiet?" The question is strange. Most people want warmth, view, price, not quiet. She thinks of the Sandpiper Inn and how the walls there are thin enough to hear the mechanical sighs of old heaters. She thinks of the spare room above her shop, the one she keeps swept but unused, where the light in late afternoon comes through lace curtains and polka dots the floor. She is not the kind of person who offers rooms to strangers, but the part of her that has been searching for a different answer all these months tilts toward yes. There's the sandpiper, she says, testing the safer choice on her tongue, but the rooms carry other people's stories whether you want them or not. She swallows. My place has a room. It's quiet. He studies her, not carefully so much as gently, like a man reading the tide table before he folds it into his pocket. I can pay up front. He looks down at his hands, as if the truth is written there. I just need a few days. What's your name? She asks, and it feels like a kind of gate. Noah, he says. Under the clipped syllable is a weariness that belongs to distances, not places. Noah Reed. I'm Evelyn. She hears herself add, it's not a hotel, so there's no chocolate on the pillow. His smile again, not for show, but for the small honesty of the joke. Chocolate keeps me awake anyway. She leads him through the bookshop. The bell announces them, dignified and hopeful, and up the narrow flight of stairs. The storm trembles at the windows like a thought not yet chosen. The room is simple, bed dressed in white cotton, a wooden dresser with a keyhole that has kept no one out for decades, a window that frames the harbour's hunched shoulders. There's an old quilt folded at the foot of the bed, hand-stitched by a local woman who said, I put blue here for calm, and yellow here for courage, and a secret square where I had my first kiss. It will do, Noah says quietly, as if the room is a person with feelings. He sets down a small canvas duffel, nothing like the bulging suitcases she used to wheel past revolving doors. He takes in the space with a careful gratitude that moves something in her, an echo of a time when every new object had a story, and every story was permission. If the roof complains tonight, she says, it's only to tell you it remembers the old storms. I don't mind old things that talk, he answers, and when he looks at her, she feels, for the first time since the day the city folded behind her, that there is an exit she didn't miss, a road that refused to disappear just because she did not know its name. The first thunder walks in on a low stride. Downstairs, the books rustle, the way paper does when it welcomes the idea of fire but chooses to remain itself. She shows him the kitchen where the kettle sighs and the mugs hang like bells. He watches her with the expression of someone trying not to startle a small animal. It makes her oddly protective of his silence. Tea? She asks. Yes, he says. Then, after a beat, please. The kettle begins its slow crescendo. The lights flicker and steady. She is surprised by how easily she imagines the scene from the outside, a stranger at the table, the storm shouldering in, two people who might be about to become necessary to each other. She sets a mug in front of him. When his fingers wrap around it, she feels the room settle. They don't talk much. She tells him where the towels are. He thanks her, as if each sentence has a weight, as if listening is his first language. As she stands to leave, he says, Evelyn, her name with its sleeves rolled up. Yes, your book. He gestures toward a copy of the shipping news on the chair. Is that your favorite? No, she smiles, slight. It's the one that reminds me to breathe. He nods, as if that is important, and it is, to the kind of people who forget. In the empty shop, she straightens spines and turns face out the ones that deserve to be seen. The storm releases itself. Rain thrums the roof, a soft percussion. She tells herself he will be a few days of weather and then a memory, like a sentence you underline but never read aloud. She tells herself this even as she knows the exact shape of his shoulders when he turned in the window light. Even as she carries an extra candle up the stairs and sets it outside his door like offering. Night lays the town carefully in its drawer. The power drops once, twice, then stays. The quiet lengthens. Evelyn lies awake listening to the hush between rainfalls. Above her, the floorboard answers to a step, then another. She is not afraid. There is a knownness in it. After a time, the steps stop. She sleeps. In the morning, the storm takes a breath, and so does the town. The harbour is ironed flat, the sky rinsed. She pads into the kitchen to find Noah already there, hair damp, sleeves pushed up. He is untangling the old radio cord with an attentiveness that seems less about radios than about dignifying whatever is knotted. "It's not broken," he says, not looking at her. "It just forgot what shape it was." "Like the rest of us," she says, before she can stop it. He glances up. There is the barest light in his mouth, the suggestion of laughter. It feels like opening a window in a room you didn't know had one. They drink coffee. He looks around the shop with the curiosity of someone who has lived without objects for a while and is relearning their mercy. "What brought you to Havenmouth?" she asks finally, each word placed like a foot on a slick rock. He considers, then says, "A map and a reason to stop reading it." She wants to ask, "What made you go quiet? What storm did you carry inside when the weather outside was fine?" But she recognizes, with a kind of shy relief, that they are the same species of person, tide watchers who will tell you everything when it feels like noticing and nothing when it feels like explaining. At noon, she props open the door and the bell becomes friendly again. People drift in. Mrs. Ames leaves still warm scones and a story about her grandfather's tin boat. Mr. Keyes asks if she'll order the birding guide with the wren on the cover. Noah lingers at a shelf of old travelogues, his head slightly bowed. It strikes her that he is not reading to escape himself. He is reading to walk towards something, to catch up with his shadow and shake its hand. When the last customer leaves, he turns a book over in his hands. "Did you ever," he asks, voice soft, "walk into a place and feel like it knew your middle name?" She smiles. "Every morning." Then, because something kind and braver than she is, nudges her ribs. "You can help out here if you like. While you're staying, I mean, if you want to rearrange the travelogues so they don't march by decade like soldiers and instead loaf around like old friends." His gratitude lands without sound, like a bird sure of its branch. He nods. "I'd like that." They work in a companionable hush. She learns the way he stands, weight slightly to one side, as if he is always ready to shift without being startled. He learns the way she tucks a fingertip against a spine before moving it, a tiny permission. The afternoon folds and refolds. In the window glass, she catches their reflection, two figures stepping in and out of the same light, and a sensation travels through her like a tide that remembers the moon. By closing, the shelves breathe easier. The radio, persuaded into its rightful shape, yields a station shaped like low light and cello. On impulse, she takes the old key from the drawer and leads him down the back stairs, out the side door, to the narrow path that knits the boardwalk to the lighthouse like a thread through cloth. The sky has chosen bruised plum. She loves it best like this, the water holding the day in its palm, not ready to let go. They walk without commentary. The wind has softened. When they reach the lighthouse, she presses her palm to its warm stone the way she always does. "Hello, old keeper." Noah does the same, tentative, and then firmly, as if introducing two friends. She feels it then, familiarity and strangeness braided tight, as if they have been circling the same island for years and only now decided to land. On their way back, he says, "You keep this town like a book, pages turned when they are ready." "And you?" she asks. "I lost my place for a while," he answers. Then, after a step, "I think I found the chapter again." She doesn't ask what knocked the book out of his hands. She doesn't tell him what made her leave the city with one suitcase and a heart she wore like a bandage under her sweater. The evening is not an interrogation. It is the first page of something that might be careful with them. They reach the shop just as the first stars appear. She flips the sign to closed, and the bell gives a secretive little laugh. On the counter, she writes on a scrap of receipt paper and slides it across to him. Her handwriting is tidy from years of addressing envelopes, the names of people who believed in thank-you notes. He reads it, then looks at her. There is a quiet gladness in his eyes. Under the desk, her foot, treacherous, curls in on itself to hide the feeling. Later, in her bed, the night hushed around her. She presses her fingertips to her wrist. Her pulse is slower than it used to be. It feels like a metronome set by the tide. She thinks of Noah 2 rooms away, the tug in his shoulders released a fraction. She thinks of the way he stood in the doorway as if he had been here before, in another weather, in a life where the lights did not flicker. She smiles into the dark, a small, private thing. If this moment had a comment section, she would type nothing. She would simply breathe. But if it had a button that meant yes, that meant keep going, that meant more of this, she would press it and hope the universe quietly subscribed. Noah sleeps lightly and dreams in fragments, as if the storm left its small paper boats in his head, and now the boats are unfolding themselves, line by gentle line. He wakes before dawn in that hour, when the world is tender with its own making. The harbour is the breath of something enormous and kind. The spare room, with its mouth of window and quilts stitched by patient hands, smells faintly of lavender and salt. He lies still and listens. A gull makes a sound like chalk. Somewhere a buoy knocks its knuckle on the water, steady, reassuring. He has not felt this peaceful in months. The word itself, peaceful, feels foreign and soft on the inner tongue. He does not plan to linger in places. He has moved through a year of temporary roofs and conversations that closed like umbrellas. He has learned to arrange his face into the expression of someone who is fine. The body follows eventually, like a late train. But the way Evelyn's shop holds its quiet, how the bell seems to know the names of the people who pass beneath it, how the shelves listen, how the windows consider the weather rather than surrender to it, does something to the tendons of his chest. It loosens what the world tightened. He dresses, folds the quilt back with care, and writes a small note to himself in the notebook he carries everywhere. The roofs here remember how to be roofs. It does not sound like much, but he knows the difference between shelter and a lid. Downstairs, the shop is a bowl of honeyed light. Evelyn is already there, hair gathered, sleeves rolled, a strand of sunlight snagged on her wrist bone. She is counting till change, her lips moving as if reciting a poem she knows by bone. He watches a moment because watching her is like watching a harbour settle after storm, an act of witnessing more than an act of looking. "Morning," she says when she notices him. The word is small, gentle, but it finds him where he is. "Morning," he returns. He lifts a hand to the bell without thinking, and it answers, companionable. They fall into quiet. He can feel in the shape of it that she is third person, limited even to herself. Someone who narrates softly what she is willing to know, someone who leaves margins. They start with practicalities. He fixes the hinge on the back door that complained yesterday. She demonstrates how the register likes its buttons pressed, firmly, not jabbed. Mid-morning, a peer worker named Matteo comes in for the 14th time to ask if the book about knots has arrived. Evelyn laughs like a small wave. "You know how to tie everything," she tells Matteo. "You just want to see if the book agrees." "I like to be praised by paper," he says, and the three of them stand companionably in the sighing shop, while outside the gulls draw their punctuation marks on the sky. When the rush settles, Noah carries a stack of donations to the sorting table. People leave their stories at the threshold, inscriptions for lovers who became exes, notes from grandmothers who underlined lines about gardens, receipts tucked like pressed leaves. He opens a battered copy of a travelogue to discover a photograph. A boy on a beach, half-turned, hair wind-lifted. On the back, "For when you forget the way we looked when life was easy." He feels the familiar ache, that kind of love letter written from a later grief. He tucks the photo back and closes the book gently, as if the past were sleeping inside. Evelyn brings him tea. "I'm tempted to start a museum of lost intentions," she says. He smiles. "Would anyone come?" "People always come," she says softly. The trick is to let them leave different. They are quiet a while. The shop offers them its soft, soothing rhythm, open, close, page turn, breath. He watches her move, how she reads spines like faces, how she remembers, and he realizes something that startles him with its tenderness. He wants to know the exact moment she decided to come here, and what the city looked like in her rear-view mirror, and which book she put in the passenger seat like a talisman. He wants to know which wound taught her the map of her own ribs, not to fix, to witness. After lunch, she says, "Come with me," and leads him down to the pier. The wind is full of iodine and history. The fishermen are back from short runs, unloading crates with movements learned from fathers and grandfathers, the choreography of belonging. She introduces him to Mrs. Ames, to Matteo's sister, to old Mr. Keyes, who insists on showing him the wren on the cover of the bird guide, as if the wren were his granddaughter. The town does not interrogate him. It grazes him with its gaze and goes on, the way the ocean touches everything and then keeps its own counsel. He realizes how hungry he is for this gentler kind of attention. They sit on the low wall with paper cups of chowder. The chowder is humble and perfect. Evelyn blows on hers, and the steam becomes a foggy halo. "I used to eat at places where the napkins were cloth, and the servers said, 'How are we this evening?' like a password," she says. "And now," she gestures to the gulls, to the neat arc of boats, to Matteo laughing with his sister. "And now," he says, because he understands the sentence without asking for the subject. She studies him. "What did you do before you started traveling like a pilgrim without a shrine?" "Architecture," he says. The word tastes like chalk. "I drew places for people to be safe in, I built a few, then I forgot how to live in any of them. She doesn't ask for the story behind forgetting. The not asking is a gift wrapped in quiet. I used to measure my life in deliverables, she offers instead. Now I measure it in how long the kettle takes to sigh and how many times a day the bell feels like telling the truth. He turns the cup in his hands, paper going damp where his thumb rests. The bell told the truth when I came in, he says. He does not say, I haven't been told the truth by sound in a long time. They walk back slow. The tide is turning, drawing the sea out like a stitch. At the corner by the mural of a whale, a little girl in red boots is crying in that silent way children do when a small disaster feels like a large one. Evelyn kneels. What was it? She asks, voice tender. The girl holds up a broken kite. Noah crouches beside them. He has built skyscrapers on paper that made investors shake his hand at parties. But the blue triangle of nylon and spindly sticks defeats him with its simplicity. He understands suddenly that this is the work, this small fixing, these gentle hands, the mending of cheap wood into enough flight. Between them, without conferring, they make it new enough. The girl's eyes widen. Thank you, she whispers, and runs to the beach where the wind lifts her disaster into air. Evelyn stands and dusts her knees. There is a small wet crescent on her palm. Noah wants wildly to kiss that punctuation of salt. He doesn't. He files the wish in the drawer where he keeps future bravery. That evening, the town glows with the kind of light that painters drink and then try to pour back onto canvas. They close the shop and sit on the small back step with their feet on the cool brick. She tells him about the first night she slept above a bookstore, how the building hummed like a cat. He tells her about a bridge he sketched that proved too light to carry its load, not because the math was wrong, but because he underestimated the weather that humans bring with them, how joy and terror weigh the same in a crowd. She laughs softly, a peaceful sound. He feels something inside him tilt toward alignment. Stay a little, she says, looking at the horizon as if the request is for the day instead of for him, and he thinks, I will, and also, what if I can't keep anything good? He has become a man who leaves before he breaks the room, but the room, this time, seems to lean into him. The air is gentle, the night is soft. The world is soothing in that precise, unremarkable way that heals without announcement. He sleeps hard. In the dark, he dreams of a house where every window is open and no one minds the weather. In the morning, he wakes with the first thought not of leaving, but of coffee and her. He starts the kettle. He arranges 2 mugs like small, reasonable hopes. Days fold into each other. He becomes the kind of person who knows which regulars will ask for the essays that argue kindly, which will ask for maps, which will lean against the counter to tell stories that beg for a witness. Evelyn becomes the kind of person who trusts the back door to latch itself if she says please. They share a quiet that becomes miniature language, a glance meaning the price sticker is stubborn, a sigh meaning the mailbox did that thing again, a fingertip against wrist meaning, hello, I see you, I am here. Sometimes he catches her in her own reflection as she locks the front door at dusk. He wonders if she recognizes herself yet. Sometimes she catches him staring at the warped ceiling from the repair ladder as if it were a cathedral. She wonders if he is remembering the precise angle at which stained glass accepts light. They do not say the wrong things. They do not say the right ones yet either. They build a scaffolding of attention. One late afternoon, thunderheads bloom far out at sea like heavy flowers. The air presses. Evelyn is setting a display of pocket notebooks when Noah's phone vibrates on the counter. He glances at the screen, and every small muscle in his face learns again how to brace. He doesn't pick up. The phone stops, then starts. He flips it face down, a tender refusal. Evelyn watches the way he looks at the silent rectangle, how he both wants and doesn't want to be found. She says nothing. Later, as they shelve a new shipment, she reaches for the box cutter, and he reaches too, and their fingers meet on the cool metal. There is a small pause, a settling. When she looks up, he is already looking, not through her, not at the space beside her, but into the exact place she keeps the softest part of herself. It is terrifying and calm. It is a hand offered in the dark without commentary. She lets her fingers curve around his. For a beat too long. For exactly enough. The bell rings. The moment folds itself into the gentle cupboard of not yet. That night, he stands at the window long after the shop sleeps. Lightning lowers itself like slow thought. He turns his phone over and reads the message he avoided. A name, an address, a reminder he cannot misplace. The memorial is on Sunday, noon, St. Gabriel's. His throat tightens. His brother's name is a stone he takes out and puts back and takes out again. He doesn't know how to carry it. He hasn't known for a year. He writes a single line in his notebook. I forgot how to talk in the same room as absence. He closes the cover. The quilt remembers the weight it's meant to hold. He lies down and lets the weather inside do what it will. In the morning, he finds Evelyn at the counter, counting spoons for the small event she hosts on Thursdays, tea and poems, and women who bring silence like an offering. He holds out the notebook without thinking. She looks at the sentence like it's a fragile creature, then at him. Her eyes are warm and steady. She doesn't wrap words around it. She doesn't move to take the weight from his hands. She sets a saucer on the counter and places her palm over his for a quiet, tender beat. Then we'll practice, she says. We'll sit near absence until it feels less sharp. Sharp is a good word. He nods. The day opens. Havenmouth becomes a place where grief does not hide under the bed, but climbs onto the couch and is handed a blanket. The shop becomes a room where names are spoken aloud and no one flinches. Noah learns the sounds the harbour makes when the tide returns after a too long leave. Evelyn learns which words are balm and which are salt, and that both, sometimes, are necessary. They are gentle with each other, the air around them peaceful. There are moments of laughter that arrive like unexpected birds and stay. There are minutes when he wants to press his mouth to hers like a promise he will keep. There are minutes when she wants to open her hands and say, "Here, this is where I keep the light I saved." On Sunday, he goes to St. Gabriel's. He stands in a pew and says his brother's name into the wide quiet. He feels something return to him, maybe not forgiveness, maybe not even the right sadness, but a shape that can be carried. When he comes back, she is in the doorway, as if she felt the handle turn from 3 streets over. He walks to her and stops an arm's length away. "I didn't run," he says, voice low. "I know," she answers. A pause that is long enough to hold them both. "You're home." The bell above their heads tells the truth again. Summer tilts toward its own ending, the way a song leans into its final chorus. Familiar, then more so. And then, suddenly you realize you have been waiting to be gathered up all along. The town slips into the softer gold of late afternoons. Tomatoes dream on the vine. The harbour learns the size of the moon all over again. Evelyn wakes and writes for the first time in months. Not fiction, not emails, but a letter to the self who came here half invisible. We found a door, and the room behind it was us. Noah climbs ladders in the morning to coax the ceiling into not sagging, and sits on steps in the evening to learn the names of clouds. He stops carrying his bag to the door at night. He leaves it in the corner like a pet that has learned to lie down. They become a pair in the town's gentle, nosy way. Mrs. Ames slides 2 scones into the bag and winks without cruelty. Mr. Keyes insists they borrow his binoculars to look at the early migrators. Matteo calls them the bookenders and laughs at his own joke. None of it pinches. All of it knits. They eat soup on the floor of the shop once when the chairs are all taken for a reading. His knee touches hers, and neither of them move away, because the world is wide, and this small contact is true. One evening the power goes out again, not from storm, but as if the town wants to test its memory. Candles bloom in windows like patient stars. Evelyn and Noah light 2 in the kitchen and 2 upstairs, and 1 on the landing for the steps that never complain. The bookshop becomes a chapel of spines. They speak in low voices because the dark invites it. In the room above the harbour, they do not undress like people in a film, nor like people who have practiced what words should go where. They undress like people who have decided gentleness is a plan. He kisses her shoulder where the light has kept its last warmth. She touches the hollow at the base of his throat, that small, tender harbour. They ask each other's permission without ceremony. They laugh once when the candle wax startles their fingers. He pauses when he feels the familiar clutch of old grief come to sabotage good things. She waits, palm over his ribs, and says the one sentence he didn't know he needed. We can be slow. The word moves through him like rain through dry ground. They learn each other by listening. The way she inhales when he crosses the bridge of her hip is a note he can make again. The way his shoulder tightens when the room goes too quiet is a line she knows how to soften with her breath. They make a map that no one else will need. It is soft, soothing, tender. After, she lies with her ear over his heart and hears not a metronome, but a small, brave drummer. He strokes her hair as if teaching his hands to comfort instead of measure. Outside, the tide turns without asking their permission and brings everything back. He tells her later the story of the bridge that failed and the brother who called 3 times that night and how he didn't pick up because he was in a meeting explaining tensile strength to men who wore watches like promises. She tells him about the love who wanted a different woman with her same face and how she began to fade to make him comfortable, and how one day she woke and couldn't remember the color she had loved when she was 12, which was the day she packed the boxes and got in the car and drove towards Salty. They do not compare wounds. They hold them up to the same light and say, yes, that happened, and look, here is the skin, knitting. The first real cold arrives like a clean sheet. The windows panic briefly, and then settle into their new season. The lighthouse puts on its winter voice. They stock the shop with blankets and books that have more winter than summer in them. They start a weekly ritual of soup and poetry on Thursdays, where Mrs. Ames reads Neruda like a hymn, and a teenager named Finn recites something he wrote about his father leaving, and the room holds him the way good rooms do. Noah watches Evelyn in those nights, how she can hand a person a sentence that will carry them across a narrow place. He falls in love with that part of her, with the awe of an apprentice watching a master shape clay into a cup that will be used every morning without fanfare. One afternoon a man walks in whose face Noah knows from a life where he wore sharper shoes. The man's name is Daniel, and he says it like a visiting card. He stands at the counter and pretends to browse. He is here to see what can be salvaged, not what can be read. "We have a project in the city," Daniel says too loudly for the small shop. "It needs your touch." Noah feels the old hunger rise, the specific praise of men who think buildings are trophies and people are optional. He feels, too, the old fear of being small if he does not say yes. He looks at Evelyn. She does not rescue him. She is a harbour, not a tugboat. He turns to Daniel and says gently, "I hope it becomes what it's meant to be." He feels the room lean into him. Daniel blinks, unaccustomed to refusals that are not arguments. He leaves. The bell tells the truth without cruelty. Later, when the shop is quiet, Noah sits on the floor as if the conversation took gravity from his knees. Evelyn slides down beside him. They do not talk strategies. She touches his jaw with 2 fingers, anointing, and says, "You kept the part of you I like most." He breathes. The air tastes like bread and possible. Snow arrives early. The town becomes a postcard someone forgot to send. The lighthouse wears its patience like a scarf. On the longest night, the whole town gathers on the pier with lanterns. They count backward from 10 as if coaxing the sun. When they get to 1, nothing happens, which is exactly the point. Everyone laughs and claps anyway. Evelyn and Noah stand close enough that every other person's breath is only weather to them. He tucks his chin into her hair. She anchors her hand in his coat. Someone begins to sing a song that has lived here longer than anyone, and the sound is a blanket. Noah feels a strange, healing thought. I could stay past spring. Time moves the way it does in places with tides, circling, returning, leaving gifts. The bookshop becomes famous in the way small things do. 1 photograph shared by someone with a talent for light, 1 sentence repeated by a traveller who needed to be spoken to softly. Strangers come and find the bell telling the truth. Some of them cry and don't know why. Some of them laugh and do. Evelyn learns to accept that what she built is also what builds her. Noah starts to sketch again, not towers, but rooms that hold weather and forgiveness. He draws a reading nook that curves like a harbour inside the shop, a place for the town to tuck itself on bad days. He builds it with his hands. The first time a woman sits there to tell her daughter the story of a fox who outsmarted winter, Noah feels a click inside him that architects are not taught to name. On a blue scarf morning in early spring, a letter arrives with a return address that makes Evelyn's stomach drop in that old way. It is from the life that asked her to dim. She opens it at the counter because the shop insists on bravery. The letter is full of apologies, too polished to be real, and the sentence that used to undo her, "I miss the person you were." She reads it and feels not anger, but distance, like the tender space between waves. She looks up at Noah, who raises his eyebrows in question without making her choose. She slides the letter into the drawer with the extra price stickers and the bell's spare screws. "I don't," she says. The relief is not dramatic. It is gentle. It is soft. It is soothing as a hand across a brow. In April, the town plants a small garden behind the shop. Finn brings packets of seeds he can't afford and insists they're an investment in metaphors. Mrs. Ames brings clippings that remember better summers. Noah builds a trellis that looks like a musical staff waiting for notes. Evelyn kneels and presses soil around small green hopes. When the first shoots appear, they laugh like people who built a house and found it watertight. A storm threatens, then veers. A rumor starts, then dies because no one feeds it. A child loses a mitten, then finds it on the lighthouse steps where someone placed it neatly, palm upward, as if it were a bowl for wishes. The days are not perfect. The kettle sometimes refuses. The radio sometimes sulks. They sometimes argue about small things, the best way to stack boxes, whether the lighthouse is a keeper or a watcher. But the arguments are boats that return to shore. They learn the sentence that ends them every time. "I'm here." One night in May, Noah takes Evelyn's hand and leads her down to the beach after closing. The moon has put on its exact dress. He has the look of a man who has decided to name a thing. He stops where the tide is smoothing itself thin. He takes something from his pocket, a ring simple as a promise said in a kitchen. He does not kneel. He stands in front of her so she can see his face. "I won't say you saved me," he says. "You gave me a room where I could save myself." He swallows. "I want to keep building rooms like that, with you." Her breath leaves and returns like a tide that knows its job. She says yes, not like a shout, not like a whisper, but like she is setting a mug on a table between them, and they will both use it every morning. He slips the ring on her finger. It feels not like a claim, but like a compass. The lighthouse sends its slow eye across the water and for once blinks just for them. The town does what towns do with good news. Mrs. Ames bakes too much. Mateo insists on constructing an arch from oars. Mr. Keyes attempts a speech and cries, which makes them all laugh because tears are allowed here, and thank God. Finn tucks a poem into the pocket of Noah's coat, and later Noah finds it, reads it aloud to Evelyn in bed, and their laughter and their quiet afterward become another stanza in a poem no one else needs to read. On the day they stand to make vows, the sky is clean linen. They speak not in performances, but in sentences they tested in the shop, in the kitchen, in the garden. "I will leave the porch light on. I will tell you my name when I forget it. I will sit near absence with you until it feels less sharp." The bell above the shop gathers the sound and makes it into something you can feel on your skin. They kiss. It is not cinematic in the way cities teach. It is cinematic in the way harbors are, returning, patient, familiar, blessed. When they turn to the town, hands clasped, the harbor applauds in small waves against wood. The lighthouse nods. The gulls draw all the exclamation points anyone could need. Later, when the last lantern is lowered, when the last slice of pie is covered, when the town drifts home to sleep under roofs that remember how, they sit on the step behind the shop with their foreheads touching. The garden breathes green around them. The radio, consent coaxed, plays something with a heartbeat. Noah whispers, as if to the room that holds them as well as to her, "Thank you for not asking me to be louder." She smiles into his breath. "Thank you for staying when the door wasn't locked." The night gathers them. The sea keeps time. Their hands memorize new arrangements. In the dark, the bell rests, satisfied. In the morning, it will tell the truth again to whoever needs to come in. Lonely men, brave girls, women with letters to put in drawers, boys with poems like lifeboats. The shelves will lean into their work, the windows will bless the weather, and Evelyn and Noah will stand in the doorway, a pair stitched by a town, ready to keep turning the pages of the life they are writing together. If this story stitched itself anywhere inside you, if some line felt like a light left on for you, press the little buttons that mean yes. Like for the harbour we made, comment to leave a word on our counter, subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter when the bell tells the truth again.